Well, a very good morning, everyone. It is 8:30 by my watch. This is the Morning Blast on Thursday, the 14th of October. Hopefully, Ryan Paisley will be along momentarily. God only knows how many mimosas deep he will be this morning. Certainly won't be sober, I imagine, judging by his tardiness anyway. Where is he? Once again, working like a well-oiled machine, Ryan and I, this morning, as we have done all week. Let's check he's actually alive. If you are in Croatia and you see a vertically challenged man staggering round a small village wearing his little shorts, then please point him this way. Joe, well, I'm going to start. I'm going to go solo momentarily, and hope for everyone's sake that Ryan can join us shortly. Otherwise, I see Zach on the call. Good morning, Zach. You might be getting a last minute call up at this rate. Anyway, let's crack on. You all know the disclaimers by now, so I don't need to go through all of those. What we will do is, no, I'm not going to tell any jokes. Ah, here he is. Oh, where's he gone? Let's see if we can promote him. Invite co-host. There we go. Invitation sent to PIQ. Earth to Ryan, are you receiving me? No, he's not, apparently. That's not good. Well, he's here, so we know he's alive. Let's carry on, and he can jump in when he arrives. It was a relatively subdued day for markets yesterday, as we expected, given the barren nature of yesterday's economic calendar. But nonetheless, very much a case of markets just continuing in the direction that they set after the CPI figures on Tuesday afternoon, with equities continuing to gain ground. The S&P up
Hello.
by a bit. Oh, here he is. Good morning.
Hello. Sorry,
Well, good afternoon at this point.
sorry. I'm struggling with combination of crow
Oh, hello.
and dodgy hotel Wi-Fi. So apologies.
Well, the only words I got of that were dodgy Wi-Fi, which is rather apt because you've now disappeared again. But Ryan is here, so he's alive at least. But anyway, let's carry on. He can join us again momentarily. As I was saying, equities rallying once more, record highs on Wall Street, some modest gains seen across the Treasury curve, and the dollar continuing to soften broadly
Oh,
against most major peers. And of course, stop saying hello. You're interrupting me again. And the market now pricing a greater than 100% chance of a 25 basis point cut at the September Fed meeting. So that dovish repricing of policy expectations continuing, and participants now very much all in on the idea that the Fed are going to be delivering a rate cut next month. Of course, this comes ahead of Fed Chair Powell speaking at Jackson Hole next week. It is getting to the point where if Powell is going to push back on that market pricing, he's going to have quite a tantrum on his hands. In terms of the Fed, of course, the circus around who will be replacing Powell next May continues. Even more names in the fray. CNBC reporting yesterday that there's now 11 candidates who are being considered by President Trump to replace Jay Powell next year. Those include all the names that we've heard before, the two Kevins, Chris Waller, Michelle Bowman, etc., but also some names from the sell side as well. David Zervos, who is chief strategist at Jefferies, he is reportedly under consideration for the role. He's been incredibly dovish in some of his commentary recently, and one of the sort of views that he's had for a long time now is this idea of 2 and 20 in terms of where neutral is for the Fed. And what he means by that is neutral in terms of policy will be a 2% Fed funds rate and a balance sheet that sits at 20% of GDP. So no surprise which direction he would take policy in if he got the job. Another name in the mix is Rick Reeder. He is global CIO of fixed income at BlackRock. He was on CNBC on Tuesday saying that this is the best investing environment ever. And he was also calling for a 50 basis point cut in September. There is a bit of a theory doing the rounds, and thank you to the gents at News Squawk for suggesting this one, that what Trump is trying to do here is put as many names in the mix as he possibly can, because that means that all of these people are likely to basically go on TV and on the airwaves spouting dovish rhetoric and also criticising what the Fed are currently doing, which may just sort of gently needle and push them towards delivering a more dovish policy stance, including a cut at the September meeting, which probably isn't the worst idea in the world in terms of him trying to massage those expectations. Although I would say that it's probably more a case of Trump thinking he's back on The Apprentice and in fact just wanting to have a bit of a reality TV show as opposed to anything else. Right, Ryan is back. Let's see if we can get him in. Connecting to PIQ. Ryan, are you there?
Hello.
Oh, at last.
Right, carry on. I was learning a lot. So
Oh,
carry on
dearie me.
talking.
Right, you're back at last. Where would we be without you? Yeah, I think this is more, to be honest, just Trump trying to run the process for naming a Fed chair like a reality TV show. Despite CNBC saying there's 11 names in the mix, Trump spoke yesterday and said that he's actually choosing between 3 or 4 people. So,
Yeah,
frankly,
hired.
God only knows what's going on with that one. We also heard from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent yesterday. He was saying that there is a very good chance of a 50 basis point cut from the Fed in September. There really isn't, mate. But again, I think this feeds into the idea of the administration continuing to try and push the Fed towards a certain outcome. Bessent was also saying he is hopeful that Steve Moran is confirmed in time for the September meeting. Again, that is very unlikely given that the Senate do not actually start work until 2 weeks before the September meeting. It would be a ridiculously quick confirmation process.
Yeah.
And also, the head of public policy at PIMCO yesterday was saying that just one GOP senator would be enough to hold up and basically gum up the entire Senate and stop that confirmation.
Michael,
Go on.
did you remember we were all shocked about my quite insightful question about where we are with Fed chairs once Trump nominates, etc. yesterday. No one was more shocked than me, especially after 8 mimosas. But you said you were going to go away and just see if there was any more details on that, or are we kind of just waiting and kind of think, is that period between Senate and actually going live?
Yeah, so I as promised, I did indeed do
Good boy, good
some
boy.
digging into that, and sadly, I didn't really find out any confirmation of it. There still seems to be this
Well,
kind of grey area
yeah,
between.
that purgatory.
Yeah, and I was unable to actually establish any sort of clarity on what happens there. Now, what I
Which
did clarify.
I would say, which in itself is valuable information, because if it does look like it's a genuine, so anyone that wasn't listening yesterday, just a bit of background before Michael carries on this bit, is my question was, what is the situation between Trump nominating, or like how solid is Trump's nomination before they actually take the seat? Because, the longer we get closer to whoever it is to get the seat, if Trump throws a paddy or the guy says one misword or says one bad thing against Trump between being nominated and takes the chair, we know what Trump's like. He could throw his toys out the pram and say, well, I don't want you to be Fed chair anymore. So my question to Michael was, is there anything, in pen on paper to say what's going on with this? Because, the closer we get to whoever it is taking the Fed chair's seat, and if that does all unravel, the more serious it is for markets. And what Michael said yesterday was, it's that period between the Senate confirmation and taking the seat that could be the crucial point, and that could be where it unravels. But go on, so Michael, what else did you gather from that?
Well, no, I was just I then did a bit more digging, and it turns out that we all sort of think of this process as the Senate gets the final say. The way that the US Constitution actually phrases it is that the Senate has powers to over advice and consent is the specific phrasing, which effectively means that these confirmation votes, yes, they're important, but as far as I could work out, it's more a case of a guideline, not the rubber stamp. The president still has the final say, which logically, and again, I'm not a legal scholar here, would lead me to believe that even if the Senate were to effectively advise the president that, yes, this man is a suitable pick or woman, yes, we consent to them getting the job, the final say is still with President Trump. So I would
Yeah,
imagine until the ink is dry or the fat lady sings, whatever analogy you want to use, and they're actually in the job, I believe that he would be able to change his mind.
which is important to know.
Yes, indeed. Now, I will stress that that is me, my sort of slightly garbled understanding of
Yeah,
US law and the Constitution, but nonetheless, I think that's sort of a logical extrapolation from the research that
but
I
like I said,
managed to
I
do.
think it's valuable. I do, because we know how Trump behaves. I do think it's valuable information in itself, or valuable knowledge in itself, to know that the game isn't over when Trump's made his nomination and the Senate confirm it, if they
Yes.
confirm it. I think, there will be some kind of risk premium probably in Fed funds based on that, because the people, the smarter people in the room will understand that that is a problem. Therefore, there might be certain hedges put on and, in options or whatever. But yeah,
Mm.
it's definitely something to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a case of, it's all signed, sealed, delivered as soon as
No.
the Senate hearings are
And
over.
so far, we're the only people I know of that's spoken about this being a risk at all. So
Well, there you go.
expect it to
Morning
be in
blast.
blue.
It,
Exactly.
it
Expect it to
may
be
be
in Bloomberg
slightly
in about a month's
shambolic
time.
some mornings, but
Oh yeah,
we are ahead of the
we kind
curve.
of know. Yeah, exactly. Look, it's a complete clusterfuck of how we got to it, but we'll get into it.
And that's all that matters.
Exactly. Yeah, it's on brand for the morning blast, right?
Yes, indeed. Right. Moving away from that's far too much
Yes, sorry.
legalese for one morning. A few other bits and bobs to get through from yesterday and from overnight. On the trade front, Reuters citing sources yesterday noting that the US government's announcement on pharma tariffs is unlikely for a few weeks. Of course, this is the Section 232, I believe it is, although it's been so long since I looked at it, I've slightly forgotten, investigation into what's going on in the pharmaceutical sector. That investigation needs to wrap up before Trump can talk about tariffs. Of course, he's been talking about three-figure tariffs on pharmaceuticals potentially. So that is, of course, one to watch. The other thing on trade yesterday, again, Reuters citing sources. They've had their Weetabix yesterday, clearly. US authorities have reportedly been embedding location trackers in certain shipments of AI chips. I think the FT were running a similar story earlier in the week or the back end of last week that basically the US is trying to clamp down on people getting AI chips into China through the back door, and basically get a better idea of where these chips are actually going once they leave the US. The trackers have reportedly been found in shipments of Dell, Supermicro, Nvidia, and AMD equipment. So one to watch there. Of course, what
Just on this, and obviously I'm quite proud of myself for not making a backdoor joke. Do we actually know if this tracking stuff, and I'm sure Tom Talks Cars will know, and hello Tom, good morning. Is this actually in the chips themselves, or just like in the containers or whatever that they're based in? Like, is it in the
well,
packaging, or is it in the chip themselves? Does anyone know that? It
Well,
seems
the
all a bit
headline here
weird to
says
me.
location trackers in shipments. So that would lead me to
And this,
believe
yeah,
that it's in the box, not the actual
that's
device.
exactly where I'm going with this. Because it does strike me as a bit weird that
Just
they've
take it
put
out of the
something actually in.
box.
Yeah, right. I didn't
I
want to
mean,
say that. If anyone from the US Treasury is listening, we're not suggesting that you skirt around these kind of things. But Judith Chalmers, aka Zach, has just said it's in the containers, not the chips, which makes sense.
thank you,
So
Zach.
look, I'm not telling you what to do, but just take the chips out the box.
Find another box. That's all you need to do.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
Yeah.
Or a
Tune in
bag,
next
or a
week for
bucket, or a
more tips on
wheelbarrow,
getting
or
around
whatever.
sanctions.
So much value on the morning blast
Oh
this morning.
mate, it's unbelievable.
Sticking with the AI space, actually, DeepSeek, which of course Tom Talks Cars told us never would ever feed anything back to the Chinese government, and then it turned out that it was. Their new AI model has been delayed. Apparently, they're having various issues with Huawei chips, which would
Why?
explain why the Chinese are so desperate to get chips from overseas. Moving away from that, Amazon yesterday, they announced a major grocery expansion. We saw some downside in shares of companies like Walmart on the back of this. Amazon are going to allow Prime members to shop perishable goods and have those delivered same day. So, of course, Amazon continuing to basically muscle into every part of e-commerce they can get their hands on. And lastly, a couple of data releases that we've had out this morning and overnight. Firstly, in Australia, we had the latest labour market report, pretty much bang in line with expectations. The economy adding 24,500 jobs last month. Unemployment dipping to 4.2%, down from a prior 4.3%. And we also had the latest growth figures out of the UK this morning. Hope you got your champagne on ice, Ryan, ready to get that popped. The UK economy growing by a huge 0.3% on a quarter-on-quarter
Right,
basis in the second 3 months of the
right.
year.
Hang on.
Hang on, hang on,
Go
hang
on,
on.
go on, go on,
Before
go
I know there's a rank coming.
on.
This was obviously quite a steep slowdown from the 0.7% that we saw in Q1, mainly because that was propped up by tariff front running. It was above the BOE's expectation. It was above the forecast range. Rachel Reeves isn't crying this morning. She's doing a victory lap instead. And now the dwarf is going to tell us why it's all bullshit.
Well, thank you for that intro. Yes, the dwarf, yours truly, will tell you, sexy dwarf, I should add, why
Oh.
it's all bullshit. GDP data, as we know, by definition, by makeup, by methodology, good word for me, especially this time of the morning, and especially how many mimosas I've already had. GDP data is backwards looking, okay? Let's look at the data that was released at this exactly the same time, which is being skirted over by the great and the good, which is the business investment number, Q on Q. So this is what the businesses are looking to reinvest into their companies, or what they're looking to invest, which obviously then leads through to, what's coming down the road. Okay, because if obviously businesses don't invest now, it's a shit show going forward. And what was that number, you ask? Well, it was expected to be 0.1% growth, which is, which is completely crap anyway, Q on Q for Q2. And it was actually down 4%. So that is massive when we talk about these kind of numbers. And it shows you the lack of confidence that British businesses or UK PLC has in the UK economy. Now, as you would expect, Rachel Reeves completely ignoring this number. And I think it's very easy to argue that this is more of a, this data relates to what's going to happen as opposed to GDP data, which is what's happened. So anyone getting frothy knickers over the GDP print needs to go and have a word with themselves and dive deeper into the data, which is exactly like Mr. Michael Brown did yesterday with the CPI data for the US. But yeah,
Yeah,
so
the other thing I would say on
go
that,
on.
just very briefly, is you're absolutely spot on,
Oh,
and the
stop it.
business investment is a useful leading indicator. The other takeaway from the GDP print this morning is one of, if not the biggest thing propping growth, inverted commas, up. It was a big rise in government spending, and
Yeah.
actually, I would say that's a problem in itself because we're
Yes.
sat here
Yes.
every day talking about how deep the bloody black hole is getting. Cut fucking spending. That would solve your problem. Don't increase it.
Yeah. No,
So
absolutely.
a very flattering GDP report this morning, which again, the
Devil's
devil
in the
is in the
detail. There
detail,
we
and the
go.
detail is
God, it's
not
almost
great.
like we're friends and we know how each other works. It's like
Yeah, and just lastly,
go
sorry,
on.
I've just
No,
seen this
go.
pop up lastly on the GDP. Torsten Bell, if he's listening, you're an
Oh,
absolute
God. What a
fucking
cunt.
idiot. The UK is currently the fastest growing G7 economy through the first half of 2025. Well, yes, technically it is. But as you would have no doubt said when you were running your left-leaning think tank, the reasons for that are not as good as you would expect, as we have just discussed, and people are certainly not feeling that in their back pocket because the GDP deflator was running at about 4% or so. So so much tripe doing the rounds this morning.
Exactly. And this is why people tune in to listen to us, but we cut through the bullshit and we call a cunt a cunt.
Indeed we do.
I've just been told off by Gemma, who's sitting next to me, for using the C word.
I thought you
Sorry.
were going to say you got told off by a hotel receptionist or something. But
No, I've already been banned from doing the blast by the pool.
oh dear. Right. Anyway,
Right.
Zach's news
Oh
roundup
yeah.
because
So
he's tuned
some
in. We've got to go through it this
Yeah,
morning.
some choice headlines from the overnight news roundup provided by Zach. Obviously, no Substack this week because I can't be asked to put it together. But even more reason to follow the awesome Zach Eisman and definitely his morning tweet that he puts out. So just scrolling through some of these. So macro news: the yen strengthened on JGB yields, and JGB yields climbed after US Treasury Secretary Bessent said in a Bloomberg interview the BOJ will likely be raising interest rates as it is behind the curve dealing with risk of inflation. Bitcoin, one for
Well,
Cam, right?
sorry,
Go
I'm
on,
just
go on,
on
go
that
on.
yen thing.
Yeah.
Someone was asking me about this morning. Besant made those comments at 12:30 yesterday, and the yen moved at about 12
Ah,
hours later. Were they
listen,
just fucking asleep or something? I mean, we're
well,
we're pinning a narrative to the price, I
I
fear.
think that could be a bit of both with Bloomberg there. Yeah, definitely. One for the Bitcoin crew, the Bitcoin bros. Bitcoin rises to a record as investors snap up riskier assets. Goldman Sachs said it expects the Fed to
God.
deliver 325 basis point interest rate cuts this year and two more in 2026. The Port of LA, they've said it handled the highest container volume in its 117-year history last month, as uncertainty over Trump's tariffs drives shippers to front load cargoes. Again, remember what we said countless times on this show: front loading of trade isn't it basically is an accounting trick. At the end of the year, you could see exactly the same amount of trade going through. What else we got? US President Trump issued an executive order that aims to speed up rocket launching and opens up door to more spaceport developments. Why have I said this on the morning blast? Well, because obviously with the Texas exchange coming online soon and SpaceX likely to IPO on that, it's definitely one to keep an eye on. GBP sterling seen fleeting strength after data showed UK economy slowed less than expected. But I think the smart people in the room, like me and Michael Brown, quote unquote smart people in the room, especially me, anyone with any, like, I think real money that looks at this realizes actually not great data. More than 100 large stores run by the UK's top supermarket chains are at risk of closure because the government plans to raise business rates. There we go. Not exactly great news for the future of the British economy. What else? A growing chorus of economists and former officials in the US and Europe is urging Beijing to strengthen the yuan, warning that prolonged undervaluation may escalate trade tensions. A sell-off in China bond markets is accelerating, sending futures on ultra-long debt to a 4-month low as a bull run in local stocks build momentum. What else we got? Geopolitical news. Trump has told European to contribute security.
Oh dear. Brian, are you still there?
By what he meant by security guarantees, so all very vague. Equity news. DeepSeek, they've delayed the release of its new model after failing to train it using Huawei's latest chip. Yeah, can you hear me? Hello?
Can
Oh,
now. Yep. Yep, I can. Oh, no, you've gone again. Oh. Well, ladies and gents, I think we've lost Ryan, so that's a shame. Clearly, the Croatian internet was only good for about 20 minutes this morning. Someone needs to go and put 50 pence in the meter somewhere. Assuming he has gone, that's rather a shame because I was quite enjoying listening to Zach's little overnight news roundup there. But never mind. What we will do is we will move on to the day ahead, and then we can wrap things up. So there are a few notable items on today's data docket. At 10 o'clock this morning, we get the second read on Q2 GDP out of the Eurozone. That is expected unrevised at 0.1% on a quarter-on-quarter basis, effectively stagnation in the Eurozone. And then into the afternoon session at 1:30 this afternoon, we have a couple of releases out of the United States. Firstly, it is, of course, Thursday, so we get the weekly jobless claims stats. Initial jobless claims, they are seen at 225,000 in the week to the 9th of August, broadly unchanged from the prior print. Continuing claims, they're expected to tick down to 1.967 million for a prior 1.974 million. Do note, though, that neither of those prints pertain to the August non-farm payroll survey week, although naturally labour market data does attract more attention than usual, given the July jobs report was rather grim a couple of weeks ago. And also at 1:30 this afternoon, we have the latest PPI figures out of the United States. Headline PPI, that is seen rising by 2.5% on a year-on-year basis in July. That would be a quickening from the 2.3% pace that we saw in June. Do note, though, importantly with PPI, the calculation for PPI does not include imports. So you will not see any direct effect from tariffs in the PPI figures that we get later on. Although, having said that, it is, of course, a key input into modelling for the PCE print that we get at the end of the month. And of course, the PCE deflator is the Fed's preferred inflation metric. Speaking of the Fed, we are due to hear from the Fed's Barkin today. That will be the third time in 3 days that he's made remarks. Thanks. I'm sure we're all glad of that. Also due to hear from the Fed's Musalem a little bit later on as well. And on the earnings front, of course, the earnings docket is relatively barren at this stage of earnings season. We are pretty much through all of the notable reports, but we do hear from agricultural firm John Deere. They report before the market open. And of course, usual sort of standing reminder about the potential for trade or tariff related headlines as we move through the day. And of course, geopolitical developments potentially as well ahead of that meeting between President Trump and President Putin, which is taking place in Alaska tomorrow. That pretty much brings us to the end of proceedings this morning. I've got absolutely no idea where Ryan has ended up. Tom Talks Cars says he might have fallen into a swimming pool. Hopefully it wasn't the deep end, otherwise we might never see him again. You'll have to tune into the Morning Blast tomorrow morning on Friday to find out what did happen with Ryan Paisley, or check local media reports in Croatia, which may tell us sooner. In other words, otherwise, we will leave things there for this morning. Have a very good day ahead, and hopefully we will both speak to you tomorrow. Goodbye for now.